So I'm going to tell you just 3 stories today. 3 very important stories from my own lived experiences and some of my reflections over the past couple of years. There's a boy I think about very often. Something happened last year, and I haven't stopped thinking about this boy since then. So it was a week before I traveled to the US. I was preparing to go to America for the first time in my life. I went to the mall to do some shopping. And I parked my car just outside the mall. I went in, got a few things. As I came out to the car, 2 boys walked up to me. And if you live in Lagos, Nigeria, I'm pretty sure you've seen this time and time again. They come up to your cars on traffic. You see them hanging around in these dark corners. We call them street boys. They're street boys that become area boys, which become a menace to society. But these 2 kids, I'm pretty sure they were really young. Definitely between the ages of 10 to 13. And I immediately became curious, and they came up to me asking me for money. And I checked to see if I had any money with me. And while I was doing that, one of the boys looked at me very closely and said, "Chess players." And he just took me back to a few months ago, prior to that time. I dedicated the entire month of December 2023 to teach children along that Lekki-Ekpe expressway that are always hanging around on the streets, to teach them how to play chess, as a way to listen to them, as a way to spend time with them, to earn their trust, and to direct them in a more positive way. And this boy had seen me in that time, but he wasn't a part of the class that we did. He only observed from a distance. But there was something that stayed with him, the mantra that we taught the other kids, that chess players observed. And I asked the boy, "What is your name?" And he said his name is Yusuf. And I asked, "How old are you?" He says he's 13. So what are you doing here? He said 5 years ago, he left home. He never knew his mother. And he was born in a small village. And this boy, at a really young age, experienced deep trauma and poverty in its worst form. And one day he decided that he was going to try to break out and make it on his own. And for 5 years, he has been wandering the streets, scavenging, trying to survive. And it really broke my heart because Yusuf's story is a very familiar one. It's one I've seen time and time and time and time again. But then something happened. As I was conversing with this boy, there was a Range Rover that just drove. And the woman just wound down, the window. And she looked at me. And she parked the car and came down with her son. And she was like, "Hey, chess master, how are you? My son is such a big fan of you. His name is Jaden." And she just beckoned him to come down from the car. And Jason came down from the car. Soft boy, this Gucci sandals, an American accent. And Jason stood side by side with Yusuf. Pretty sure Jason was maybe 10 or 11. And I was conversing with the mom. And in that moment, I caught Yusuf's demeanor. It had changed. He felt so small in the presence of Jason. And I told Jason, I said, "Introduce yourself. You guys should get to meet each other." And the boy stretched out his arms like this and said, "Oh, my name is Jason." And Yusuf couldn't respond because he couldn't even speak English. And he immediately felt small in that moment. And, the woman took a selfie, and I took a picture with her son, and they left. And I gave Yusuf some money, and I left as well. I couldn't stop thinking about it because that moment left me with a very deep epiphany. There's no scenario, there's no situation that will bring Jason and Yusuf together in the same room anymore. They can never get to go to the same schools. They will never get to exist in the same social spaces. And do you know what the reason for that? It is something that seems so arbitrary, but then it is simply because of the lottery of birth. Yusuf was born to extreme poverty and Jason was born in privilege. And that has defined who gets to dream and who gets to survive. And the entire life that Yusuf has lived has been one of survival. But something else occurred to me as I began to think about what the trajectory of both their lives would look like. Maybe Jason would go on to Harvard, become a doctor or whatever. But Yusuf, two things would happen. He would need to lose a lot of his childhood innocence and become much harder than the reality that life shows him on a daily basis. And in shedding that, he has to do a lot of hard things. And this is the trajectory that ensures that Yusuf becomes an area boy, a street thug, a hoodlum, one that becomes a tool in the hands of the highest bidder, becomes a tool even in the hands of bad politicians. And when he becomes an area boy, we complain, we say good for nothing, they're useless people. But Yusuf was neglected as a boy because no one saw him. Now, I'll tell you the second story. Remember, I have just 3 stories to tell. Sometime in 2018, I had an idea to use chess as a tool to help children in impoverished communities develop a new sense of identity. One that can position them in a way that they can be seen, not just for their poverty, but for their intellect. And that stems from my own personal story because I grew up in the slums and someone gave me a chessboard and it helped me find my place in the world. And I dedicated my entire life to helping other children like me find their place in the world as well. Now to the second story. I was driving in 2021 at Oshodi Under Bridge, and for those who are familiar with that place, it's one of the dens for criminals. And my car was stuck in traffic. And a boy came up to the car and he was asking me for money. I didn't have any money, but I tried not to maintain eye contact. So I drove off. The following week, I had another experience. I was stuck in traffic, and some thugs came to my car with knives, and they were banging the window and asking for money. These 2 incidents were separate things, but it takes deep wisdom to be able to connect the dots. Because the child that I neglected will someday lose that innocence and become the thug that wouldn't have to beg me for money, but would take it with violence. And because these 2 things are so independent of each other, we don't understand how they're so deeply intertwined because, again, it is the boy that becomes the man. So what happens in that gap? So I decided to take a few chessboards and I went to Oshodi Under Bridge, gathered all the boys together, started to teach them chess. And after many months of doing this remarkable work at Oshodi Under Bridge, we were able to save 50 of those boys and help them find their place in the world again. Some of those boys have gone on to win local and international tournaments. And one of them, the boy who won the tournament, Fawaz, who used to be a street kid, is a software designer and also runs his own fashion brand. A lot has happened in that time. The third story is this. Earlier this year, I was in Times Square, and I was breaking a world record for the longest chess marathon again. But this time I wasn't alone. I was with 5 children right in the heart of New York City that had come from some of the worst slums. And we brought them on this trip, and they won silver medals. They even won the gold medal at the United Nations Chess Championship. But here they were with me in the heart of Times Square. And people came around and they were watching their games. They were playing alongside me. And for the first time, the world saw them. Not for where they come from, but by what they have become. They have become children that now show great intellectual capacity for chess. Now, why have I told you these 3 stories, and what really is the conclusion here? One of the greatest tragedies of the elites and we the privileged isn't just necessarily cruelty, but it's indifference towards the situation that we do not understand. We see these children on the streets, but we don't really see them. We don't see them because we don't have a lens of compassion and empathy to see that they're just like us. And the only arbitrary thing that separates us is the lottery of birth. And that is why I've dedicated the last 10 years of my life to wearing big caps for little children. So for the first time, the world can see them a bit differently. Not for what they are, what they look like presently, but for what they can become. And this is what happens when a boy sins. He becomes so much more than his mistakes. And it comes to the full realization of the potential that he has. And I'll tell you this, right? And this is a simple but very urgent message for all of us. Like somewhere in our communities, in our homes, there's a boy who has mastered the art of hiding in the dark, of disappearing. Because in the times when the boy tried to stand up and fell, the world laughed at him. But a child or a boy who's not embraced by the village will someday become a man and grow up to burn it down. So it is our responsibility to look out for that boy, to remind him of the possibility of his life, to remind him that it can become so much more than the script that life has made available to him. Because when we truly see the child, the boy child, for what it can become, it becomes truly powerful and it becomes an asset to our society. I still think about Yusuf every single day because, like I said, the story is a very familiar one. But we need to learn the consciousness of seeing people, not just through the lens of pity, but through a deep lens of compassion and empathy. Because it is one thing to look, and it's another thing to see. And when we truly begin to see the boy child, the miracles truly, truly happen. And I can tell you all the many success stories of children like Fawaz, like Ferdinand, that I saw for the first time in their rawest form in some of the worst slums in Nigeria. But today, they have become global stars, celebrated all over the world, winning both local and international chess tournaments. Because for the first time in their lives, somebody saw them. And ladies and gentlemen, that is what I think is the greatest honor of our lives. That somebody sees something that we don't see about ourselves. And not only tell us that this is what you can be, but they show us, right? And in doing that, you have enabled them with deep conviction to bend the trajectory of their own lives. You have given them the most powerful thing, which is a mirror, to see themselves, to see their own journey of becoming. And I'll leave this with this final analogy. In the game of chess, the pawn is the least valuable piece on the chessboard. But it has a very interesting ability. If it's able to march to the other end of the board, something happens. Then it goes in transformation. From being the smallest piece on the board, it can become the queen, which is the most powerful piece on the chessboard. And the queen has unbridled strength. She's unstoppable. And with the queen in the game, you're most likely to win the game. And I give this analogy because the boy child is like a pawn, small, insignificant, and very, tiny in the grand scheme of things. But when that pawn or when that boy child is enabled on his own journey of becoming and it makes it to the final square, it becomes truly powerful. And that power is what we need to unlock in every single boy child for our society to become so much more, for our country to become better, and for our civilization to advance. So I leave you with this final thought. That do you really see the boy child? And what can you do within your own capacity in the problem that you're solving, in the way that you're contributing, in the way that you're justifying your privilege? That you make sure that seeing is completely imbued in that design of the work that has been placed in your hands. That you truly see, not just because it is obvious, but because there's potential that is to be discovered. And when we do that, it is how we truly change the world, right? And it is how we give the boy child an opportunity to be their best selves. Thank you very much.